right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Eichbrett, and joined with me is the captain, Mr. Andy Full, who is sporting nothing but Bills gear and will probably be shouting rampantly throughout this episode, if all goes well. But what's going on, buddy?
Oh, just living another day in the dream, I guess you could say. Still weeping about my motor issues Saturday and gonna get the boat in tomorrow to make sure it's good to go and hopefully get these guide trips I lost out on the last few days, get them back in the schedule here in November when the fishing's about to be off the chain. So fingers crossed that it's just something stupid. But dude, what a Saturday.
Yeah, fall is 1,000% here, and I think you and I are probably one of the most happy people about it. I mean, most people are in the deer stand or something like that, but for the guys that can get out on the water during the fall, people know how absolutely dumb the fishing can get in the north.
Especially when it's windy, raining, not just raining, like pouring buckets.
Uglier the better.
Yeah, it was absolutely that. What a day Saturday was.
If it's going to be really nice out, just hope that there's a football game on or that you're a hunter. If it's really nasty out, get on the lake. Yes. I'm sure our guest today knows all about that, Mr. Jonathan Kelley, who's sitting down in the queue. But let's talk about it a little bit Saturday, because obviously we're going to have a video coming out down the road to plug that. But it was nutty. We had our Western New York Bassmaster team championship. And basically, I guess if you want to start the story here of how the day started with an alarm on your boat, do you want to begin here?
Hold on. So I think the day started when we launched the boat in the downpouring rain. I decided to eat a donut. And that probably should have been like the bad omen right off the bat, right? Stuffing this cinnamon brown sugar donut down my gullet as we're getting ready to take off. And yeah, we're screaming down the lake. I pass one boat, and I'm like, sweet. All of a sudden, my boat's screaming at me, an oil alarm. And I'm like, great. And thankfully, the lake is about this big. So got like 3/4 of the way to our spot. We trolling motored up to it, and Bailey sticks one right away. Big one. And I was like, all right, this is awesome. And then I'll let you take it from here, because you continued to keep sticking them, I think, after that point for quite a long time.
We sat on one area, which was going to be like our predominant area for almost the entire day. Like, and it's literally like a 20 foot by 20 foot. Like it's small. It's basically
a tiny shell bed.
Yeah, it's a shell bed on a hump that wasn't on mapping that I found using my Humminbird auto chart. And basically, that's all we fished the whole day, predominantly the whole day. And we stuck a couple good ones, but I knew the boat was going to get better the windier it got, and it wasn't that windy as we thought it was going to be that morning. So basically, we went to fire up the motor to go check one more spot to pass some time before coming back to let the spot reload. And basically...
limp mode.
Yeah. Andrew's boat started to scream at him again and started smoking. And basically it was, let's play it safe rather than sorry, and just not start the motor. So we literally trolling motored like 4 miles to this spot just for it to be a dud. And then we stopped on one spot that was like an iffy spot that I had that more people knew about. It was more of a community hole-ish. I caught a 4.5 on an A-rig, a largemouth. The only largemouth I caught all day. And then nothing more from that. Went back to our first spot.
You caught one on the way back to it, like randomly in the middle of the abyss of nowhere.
Oh, yeah. So
that was
basically
like a 4.5.
Was, yeah, so what we did, Andy and I, this was like our best decision-making day, and I think your motor crashing, as sad as it is.
It slowed us down.
Yeah. So there was a specific part of the lake that like had a sharper cut bank, and basically the grass line, you could fish the grass line and efficiently fish docks at the same time. So Andy was able to skip docks with the chatterbait, and I was able to throw down the grass line with the A-rig. And it only worked for one bite, but the one bite helped us out. Like literally right at our feet, right at the trolling motor, I'm screaming the A-rig back up. And went bam, and it scared the crap out of me. Like I almost jumped and crapped myself. And it was like a 4.5-pound smallmouth. So we put that in the box. Got back to our first spot. Proceeded to wallop on him, 4-pounder. Couldn't get giants, but like we had all 4.5 pounders of all smallmouth, and including one blue drum walleye looking smallmouth that
That was just insane.
It was wicked. If you guys haven't seen it yet, go to our Instagram or Facebook because we have a picture of it. The thing's gnarly. Or go to Andrew's Instagram. The thing's wicked cool.
I don't even know how to describe the blue color of it. It was like a slate gray with like a blue purple hue.
It looked like an Alabama smallmouth. It's kind of what Ronnie Moore was saying in the comments. But
yeah,
it almost looked like, in relative terms, like a bluegill and a smallmouth had a baby. And that baby got huge.
It's nuts.
Yeah. But
Absolutely
basically, long story short, obviously we'll go into it in the full video, and we're not about to talk about the tournament all day today because Jonathan's probably sitting in the queue like these idiots. But basically, we're on our way back. We gave an hour and a half to trolling motor back to the ramp because we didn't have a big motor, and we're gonna have the same game plan of I'm gonna hit grass lines and he's gonna hit docks. Well, part of the lake turns into a shallow flat, so I'm like, you keep hitting docks. I'm gonna sling a top water out into a flat and just hope for one big bite. Well, Andrew gets a high 4, and then like 30 yards docks down, like the last 10 minutes we have of fishing, Andrew sticks a big one. He goes, it's a big one, and I see it flash. I'm like, dude, it's a 5-pounder. Well, we get in the net. We're like, dude, it's a 5.5-pounder. We put it in the box. Don't think anything of it. We call quick, and then we get the boat back on the trailer, off, about to go weigh in. We open up the box, and we're like,
and it's like folded sideways in my big live well. Like those Triton live wells come way back underneath to like the battery compartment, and it was folded. And I was like, dude, that's like a 24-inch fish. Like that's a giant for New York. Just to get beat out by Ryan and Ian for lunker by 0.10 of a pound.
Yeah. we open the live well, and like it's big when the head is touching the wall and the tail's curled in, like Andy said. And we're like, dude, that's a 6-pounder. Well, we put it on the scales and it's a 6.48. So it was a 6.5. So basically what went from a 5 turned into a 5.5. And basically Andy had a giant, like biggest fish you said you caught in like what, 6-7 years, something like that?
6-7 years. Yeah, biggest largemouth I've caught probably 6-7 years.
Yeah. Well, and then we get beat out by a whole pound. Guys just sacked them up. It was like 25.86. We had 24.86. I think it was 22 for third, and then like 18 or something like that. So it was a little bit of a drop off to fourth. But either way, it was a lot of fun. We were saying it like either we got it in the bag or somebody really caught them. And if they do, we don't care because like we did everything we could with the means that we had. So like we weren't mad, but like people smoked them. So
yeah, it was. I think there was 2 6s. We had 2 over 6. There was a smallmouth just under 6 weighed in, and then another largemouth that was like 5.98. So basically a 6-pounder. I think every team had like a 5.5 or bigger in their boat. Like absolutely insane. It was the perfect storm. We got there. It was cloudy, downpouring the whole way, and the temp dropped throughout the day. So the barometric pressure continued to drop through the day, and they just chewed literally all day. And then at the day it got sunny and caught a 6.5. So it's like, what is going on?
Well, I think speaking on a perfect storm, and this dude had a perfect storm for
absolutely
the AOY, to win Northern Open's AOY.
Incredible.
Let's just get what's that?
Incredible.
Absolutely incredible. Let's just get him on here because we've been talking for almost 10 minutes. We told him 5.
Yeah, 5, 8 rabbit holes.
Kelley, what's going on, dude?
What's going on, guys? Thanks.
Congrats.
Thank you.
I apologize for lying and saying that we would chat for 4 or 5 minutes. And
you do not realize how hard that was to listen to you guys talk about how great fall fishing is. And you said it in the end. You were like, in the north. Because right now I'm in the south, and it's a grind down here. They're doing what you guys are doing right now.
Yeah, come on up when you get home. I don't think you're that far from us, right? What?
No,
4 hours?
I don't even think it's that far. I think
what
like
is home
3
for
hours,
you?
20 minutes for me.
What is home for you, John?
Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, you're about 3.5.
Oh, right. Yeah, we talked about this. I used to play hockey down in Scranton all the time.
Yep.
Well, dude, what are you doing? Get back up here.
I know. I'm stuck down here trying to win $200,000 at this one tournament that's going on down here in the South. So I have no choice.
Wait, which tournament is this?
The MLF Toyota Championship.
Oh, well, yeah, that one. Okay. Fair enough. Well, dude, I have to be straight here. I am a little jealous because beyond Lake Erie or Lake Ontario, you are in one of my favorite places on the entire planet. As much as people say they hate Lake Chickamauga, I absolutely love that place because you can do 12,000 different things and catch fish.
Well, I like this place, but unfortunately, the tournament's not here. The tournament's at Pickwick.
Oh.
I'm just here right now because it's off limits at Pickwick. So instead of driving 16 hours back home, it made more sense for me to just stay here for a couple days and then head back down.
Well, I am still jealous that you're but dude, before we get too deep into this thing, for folks who may not know you, obviously you won the Bassmaster Northern Opens AOY, so huge congrats on that. But let's hear about how it all started, like how you got into bass fishing, who got you into it, first fish you caught, whole 9 yards.
I got into it when I was actually so young. I don't remember my first fish. I was probably 3, maybe 4 years old, and my dad's the one who introduced me to it. So I know we just started off fishing from the bank on the Susquehanna River, which is just by our house. So I'm assuming that might be where I caught my first fish, but it's been that long that I don't remember.
Dang. Okay, so it's like, was it a smallie? Was it a largie?
There'd be a smallie there.
Okay.
So that's where it all started.
Right.
So, like, how did you get into tournaments? Like, what was your route into all that?
We didn't ever have like high school fishing around me or anything like that. So I started fishing tournaments when I was like 7 or 8 years old with my dad, just, small local club stuff. And actually one of the first couple of tournaments we started doing was night tournaments. The lake by us had tournaments from 10 at night till 6 a.m. My mom hated it because I was essentially still a baby and my dad was taking me out all throughout the night and we were fishing night tournaments in the dark. So she was petrified to allow him to do that. But, it's just what we like to do. And, the tournaments were always on the weekend. So it worked out for both of us. And that's kind of how I got into it. Got my first taste of tournament fishing. And then after that, moving up into college, I fished the college series when I went to Coastal Carolina.
How was the college route for you? I mean, I feel like people always talk about what's more advantageous for guys. Do you take the college route or do you get a job right out of college and fish the BFLs, fish the Opens? There's people that debate different routes, but how do you feel about your route taking the whole college way of things?
The college route is sometimes taken for granted. When you say, like, in my situation, when I made that next level, a big question like I get is, well, how can you catch them other than where you just caught them to qualify? But in college, I had the opportunity to see so many different lakes. Like I spent, a handful of tournaments down in Florida, Tennessee, Alabama throughout my college career because I did go to a Southern school. So that was kind of my advantage. I lived in PA and I went to a school in South Carolina. So that might be like a bonus, for me, because I did get to experience different types of water in that sense. So I really do think that was huge, for my standpoint going forward.
Yeah, I can see how that's kind of like well versed you in terms of like, especially in this prep for the Elite Series, right? I mean, that's being able to at least just being able to see a certain body of water. It can give you maybe not an advantage, but a better sense of mind when you're going to these bodies of water, especially being that you're from the north.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just see so many different styles, when you fish down south, like from the deep reservoirs, you get those clay bank lakes that those are very unique. Those are one of the hardest lakes to figure out at first. When you're first learning those, it could be really confusing. It's just typically the bait on those lakes move a lot, so to really get into a pattern on those style of lakes is tough, but like it is good to, spend that time on and learn them. And I think I've done that, to at least have an idea going into those styles of lakes.
What was home body water for you at Coastal?
Winyah Bay.
That's an interesting one.
Tough. Yeah.
You got the grinder mentality then from that place. And also where you're at in northeastern PA, a lot of those lakes up there are grinder lakes as well, especially in the summertime. So I know a little bit about Pawpack. So
from grinder to grinder.
That's where I was referring to when I said we started fishing the night tournaments.
It's a big lake, but I hear there's some giants in it, but it's tough to figure them out.
Yeah.
how much do you think that played into your success this year in the Opens? Do you credit just being a northerner that you may have been familiar with those bodies of water, or was it maybe because having a grinder mentality, especially if you did well at Oneida, you had to have had that grinder mentality for the way that place fished?
Yeah, I mean, for the first one at the James, like I credit that all to experiencing my time at Winyah Bay. Like, no doubt, those few years at school being right there, that taught me a lot about a tidal fishery and that style of fishing. It's tidal and there's no grass. You're fishing pads, you're fishing wood. So that's kind of how the James set up, and I kind of rolled with it, and that was a huge benefit, especially getting off to a good start at the beginning of the year. That was one of the biggest things.
Right. Or just do what Joe LaBarbera said, which Joe, by the way, sent me a text saying he was going to pick on you tonight. I don't know if you guys have history, but he said drive 90 minutes to the Finger Lakes instead. Old Joe always finds his way into the show. But dude, here's what I want to do. I obviously congrats on qualifying for the Elite Series, and we're going to talk about kind of what is to come for you. Obviously this spring when the season starts, but I want to backtrack and start at the James River and kind of walk through your tournament practice, what was going through your head, and then how each day of the tournament helped you. And we're going to do that for Oneida and St. Lawrence. Just kind of hear how the season went for you, maybe some adjustments you made, things that went well, lessons learned, all that. We want to hear it all.
Maybe even thought process too, like leading up into it, like prepping.
Yeah, so for the James, I down for 2 days just to see it prior to the Open, like that week of the Open. I had a BFL at the Chesapeake Bay in the end of April. So after the BFL, I drove down, I think it was an extra 3 hours or so to the James, and I spent Sunday and Monday there just to kind of, get a feel for it. And kind of I just wanted to use that as, a way to determine, do I run or do I stay up top? And that's kind of what that little pre-practice I did. So then when I came back for the tournament, I picked an area, I ended up running. I picked an area where I thought, I should do well. And in the 40 minutes of my first day of practice, I had over 20 pounds on deck.
Oh,
so when I caught that, it was like, okay. Yeah, I knew this place was good in the spring, but I said I didn't know it could be that good. I was like, maybe I just dumped into them. So I was like, let's go try to mimic this pattern somewhere else and see if it works. Somewhere else, and I caught 18 pounds in the first couple casts, and I was like, okay, this has to be happening for everybody. So I kind of started trying different patterns, and I was still catching fish the whole. I was like, I guess the bite is just on, and everyone's going to catch them. And I just kept around, I kept, my options open for the first couple of days of practice. And every day was the days of practice. That was Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I honestly thought I was going to win 25 pounds 3 days in a row. It was incredible. And then on every day got colder and colder and colder. On Tuesday, I noticed it's just they weren't happening like they did the first 3 days. And then on Monday, we had a gas shortage that week, so nobody practiced on Wednesday. So going into the tournament on the first day, I just, I knew where to potentially catch a big bag. So I ran for it, and when I got there, I had a couple areas, but my main area I stopped, and it was 59-degree water temp. In practice, it was 70 to 71. So right then, I knew I was in trouble. So after that, I kind of just thought I could fall back on some wood because of that cold front changed everything. And when I go out to the main pool of wood, there was boats everywhere on it. So I was like, you know what? I can get in line and just, settle for an average bag, or I can go back to where I, thought I could catch big bags and just, park it and just sit there and just grind on them and see if I can, get a bite here and a bite there. And that's what I did. Essentially, I had 5 or 6 areas that I figured I could catch over 18 pounds in each one. And that first day, I caught a good fish in every single spot, but I only caught one. I don't know if it was just I got lucky and I caught the last fish that was there, but whatever was there, I think I was catching that last wave moving up. They left. Like, we completely just hightailed them out of there.
Dang.
And
Grinder.
Yeah.
Florida fishing on the James.
It's crazy to see like how good it was and to see how fast it changed. Because like once that first day happened, I was kind of like, all right, well, I settled for that bag, but I was like, I don't think I can do that again. So I was like, what can we do different on day 2? So I completely scrapped what I had and started on something different day 2. I didn't catch a fish. So I went back down to the chick where I was fishing. Didn't catch anything. So I just changed up a pattern where I just caught little ones in practice. It was more of like a deep channel swing. And I ended up catching 14 pounds or something. So I had another good bag on day 2. And again, I was like, all right, I can just run down to there for day 3 and catch those fish again. It's tidal, it's your refill. Ran down there on day 3, didn't have a bite. So it was kind of every day was just fishing on the fly. Just trying to survive. It turned into that tournament for a lot of people, I think. I'm sure some people were on them like I was on them. I didn't really talk to many people. I know some struggled, but from what I seen, it was just fishing too good. But that cold front really affected us, and we had severe low tide that really affected it a lot as well.
It really sucked them out even harder than the cold water probably did.
Mm-hmm. I had one. I never got to fish in the tournament, but I was putting my boat across a flat, and there was grass in the back, and they were in there, but I never was able. I couldn't even try to get back there in the tournament, so I don't even know if they were still there or
not. Yeah, what's really interesting to me is like I saw some guys that I knew and saw some people on social that were going through the same thing that you were going through in terms of a grinder. And a lot of people, what they do is when things get tough, they either downsize, they slow down, they finesse down. This is going to lead to a question here, which I'm curious about in terms of you as an angler. But Brandon Palaniuk won it throwing an 8-inch mag draft, big swim baits, like complete other spectrum. Like you hear about guys when things are tough going a certain way, either you downsize or you upsize. And he's like, I think one of the only guys that upsized and proved to work out for him. When you're going through and it's going to be a grinder, are you a downsizer or is there times when to upsize? How do you know when to make that adjustment?
I like downsizing, but I didn't make that adjustment. I stayed big. I mean, I was throwing a chatterbait with a 4-inch swim bait on it. To some people, that's kind of big.
Moving water.
Especially with a cold front, that is big. And then I was also throwing just a normal crankbait, square bill, normal size. I didn't downsize that. And I was throwing a big buzzbait, like the big War Eagle with the giant blade. I mean, I didn't get many bites on it after that cold front hit, but I still caught, I think I caught one fish I weighed in per day on that buzzbait. So I kind of, had the same mentality as him. I didn't go as big as he did on that spectrum, but I stayed with what I was doing. And there were a boat or two around me in the areas that I did catch fish, and like they're just sitting there with a spinning rod, and they were catching a couple, but when they did get bit, they were catching a pound or 2-pounder. So, I wasn't going to try to, match them fish for fish if it was only that size. I was just trying to get, a couple bites and just make sure they were the right ones.
Sounds like Palaniuk had some brush pile deal. Joe said his deal was totally specific and it was off the bank. So it sounds like maybe something he kind of had to himself. But dude, that's if you can last the grinders, you're going to be successful, right? I mean, if you can make it through the grinders, one, those are the lessons you're going to learn the most. Yep. 2, those are going to stick with you, the adjustments you make, because you'll find yourself in similar positions, especially if you find more years like the Elites had this past year and the amount of grinders that they had.
Oh, gosh.
So if it stays that way, I think you'll be okay. But
grinders are going to grind.
Yeah. And talking about a grind, we're moving on to Oneida, which was honestly god-awful compared to the James, and it sounds like the James was the grind. Walk us through Oneida.
Going into the amount of people that were like, especially after the first one when, I finished in the top 10, they're like, you're in a great spot. You got through the hard one. And I was like, I did a hard
No, I
one
didn't.
before before playing tournaments. I knew what we were getting into, exactly what Oneida was going to offer, and that was a little worse on us than I had expected. I knew it wasn't going to be a walk in the park. I even, I knew it was going to be very challenging. Oneida gets at the end of July, and I really think that my biggest, the biggest one for me, Oneida, that was the hump tournament. That was the one for sure.
Yeah.
So like when I went, good.
I don't know if you want to tell the story or not. Joe the barber says, "Tell us how day one at Oneida started. Tell him what you said to him about getting wet." Don't know if that's a story we want on here, but if it is, by all means, let it rip.
Day one. All right. Yeah. I remember day one. Yeah. I tried to forget day one. I kind of forgot about it. So, typical Oneida fashion. One start. I don't know. What do we want? 6. It's calm as can be. And I'm in the first flight. And I'm like, I'm going to go throw top water and I'm going to catch, 2 or 3 fish right off the bat and I'll be good. Didn't really think about the wind factor kicking up, but typical Oneida. So I run to my spot. I get there, throw top water. No, I didn't catch anything. So I was tucked around the corner. So I didn't think I was there for 30 minutes. And I'm like, all right, let's move. Now I'm still in a pair of sweatpants and a hoodie. I take off around that corner, like a 4 or 5 foot waves comes over the bow and soaks both of us. And I'm in, like I said, in the hoodie. So at this point, I'm like, okay, let's just run to where we're going and see what happens. I'm already wet. So then we get to my second spot and it starts raining. So I'm like, all right, gear on. You're in a hoodie sweatpants, it's already soaked. You can leave this on. You can strip down and put the rain gear on, but then that gets wet. What are you going to wear off the water? So I was like, I'll tough it out. Wet hoodie and a wet pair of sweatpants all day. And it rained and rained and rained. And waves kept splashing over the bow or side. And
Macho man.
It was one of the most miserable times fishing.
Oh, gosh.
You earned that one.
Oh, yeah. I learned that
Iron Man award.
You put your rain gear on and start the day.
Yeah, it's that sounds like Central New York, all right.
Yeah. Wind forecast for Oneida. 2 out of the south. Get to Oneida. Blows 15 out of the east. It's like,
Yeah.
I think that's what it was that day. Actually.
or like 30 out of the east, and you come out of, what is it? I can't never remember the name of the launcher. You come out, you hang a right, and there's like 5 footers coming down the lake, and you're just like, all right, play it on the trailer.
Yeah,
so what was
that first day?
I think we got a delay here, but yeah, go ahead, John. Sorry.
I said that first day was like a nightmare. Like just the decisions made were terrible. I'm glad I overcame that day.
What was your ratio? Like, did you have all green? Did you have some brown mixed in? Like at the end of the tournament, like how many brown to green fish did you have?
I only caught 3 smallmouth a day, and completely bailed on smallmouth and just largemouth fish.
Nice. I know a lot of guys live and died on smallmouth, and it seems like the guys that had both were the guys that were successful. But the top 3, I think, were predominantly all smallmouth, which is usually how Oneida rocks, unfortunately. But let's move on to the last. What's that?
I said it changed. There used to be able to catch a lot more smallmouth and largemouth mixed.
Right. Okay. I think we are you off your phone right now, John?
Yeah, I'm not on it.
Oh, not? Oh, okay. The service is a little shaky, so we got a little delay right now. Let me try removing you real quick and bringing you back to see if that helps.
Okay.
Oh, okay, he's looking. But dude,
I think the
Oneida's
TV was-
always been like that.
so I
though.
cut that off.
What's that?
The TV was hooked up to Netflix. I shut that off.
Okay, we'll give that a rip. But I was talking to a lot of different guys, and they were saying how everyone was catching them, and this is typical Oneida. It's one of the fisheries that I found, and when I talked to a lot of people, it's one of the most pressure sensitive lakes I think in the country. I mean, people can argue that, but like guys were sacking them up. Guys had 18, 20 pounds in practice, but when you have 200 boats in the lake for 2 weeks, I think pressure ultimately just got to those fish, and that's why it was so brutal in terms of one, bag weights, but two, people not having a limit on both days of the tournament. It was tough on a lot of people, and I think it was very tough on people who were predominantly power fishing. Those were the guys I think that struggled the most. But the guys that were able to know that there's an area with a lot of fish, slow down, those were the guys that were proving successful, which it sounds like that's what you did.
Yeah,
But,
what I see, I was one of those guys on that 18 to 20 pounds of smallmouth. You were only getting like 6 to 7 bites a day, so that kind of made it hard for me. That first day, I only had the short day. I had the 2 o'clock check-in. So when it got rough, I knew I had to commit to something, because to bail on the smallmouth when I had such a good practice, largemouth fishing just didn't. So I kind of toughed it out, and I noticed, I think what happened was didn't have any rough, days. And Nida can be decent when it gets rough, but our tournament days were super rough. I think that really affected things. When you can get like a 1-2 foot chop on Oneida, it's usually pretty good. But we had like straight 4 or 5 foot waves, and I think that really affected things a lot. It affected anglers' ability to fish, but it also just affected how the fish were setting up. I know for one, like the way I was catching them in like 6 to 10 feet, and those were just pulling up feeding on like the calm days, and I was catching them, power fishing. And I think what happened, and from what I've seen a lot of guys doing smallmouth fishing that did do well, everyone just, they slid out and they were just on those drops and like that, 12 to 16 feet. And that's how they ended up catching their fish on those really rough days. But that, that just, it's what, it kind of what happens sometimes when it gets that rough. You kind of have no choice, and that's what you have to do. You can't efficiently fish those, a little bit shallower fish.
yeah, it's, like we said earlier, and Andy and I were chatting about our weekend this past weekend. Like, obviously, the nastier, the better. The more fish will chew, the more, when conditions change, and it makes them easier to hone in on bait fish that obviously struggle in that type of environment. Obviously, the fishing gets better, but then there comes a point where there's a threshold where it just becomes harder on the fishermen. The fish are still active. It's just more of like it just impedes on your efficiency, which it was both days. The wind was absolutely ripping, which really sucks for just about everybody. But either way, you survived that one. You survived the monster called Oneida with 200 plus boats. So bravo. And then I guess moving on to the last one. What's that?
The biggest thing on that one was fishing. The biggest thing was bailing on the smallmouth and fishing for largemouth. Going into that tournament, I never thought 12 to 15 pounds of largemouth would play. And that's a big lesson learned. Don't always think you need to have a certain weight, because you could be wrong. And I was the first day.
Yeah, I think in a tournament like that, just staying consistent on smallmouth or largemouth in general is a mission accomplished in itself, because it can be so hard, especially Oneida is known for having stingy fish that do not stay in one spot. Largemouth especially. Like, people talk about them being ghosts. So they're there one day and they're gone the next. Like, they seem so consistent, and they're largemouth, so you think they're lazy, but in Oneida, for some reason, they're not that way. So bravo on sticking to that. But let's move on to the last open at the St. Lawrence River. Obviously, you were sitting very good going into that one. And I kind of want to hear your thought process, your mental state going into that last open, and kind of maybe how that affected practice, maybe how it affected your tournament, maybe some things that you might have sacrificed just to make sure you're being safe. I want to hear all about St. Lawrence River and leading up to it.
Well, leading up to it, I fished the Toyota Series up in Messina prior to the Open. So I kind of had an idea of, I just like we're in. So that's kind of where I knew I was going to be no matter. I never even spent any time from just above Alex Bay up the river. Everything was from there to the mouth and then into the lake even. So going into it, I had, everyone sees St. Lawrence River and I got to fish Ontario. I got to fish Ontario. And I mean, I don't usually that doc talk, so I kind of was like ignoring it. But one day I'll go out there, I'll try it. And I went out there and I good on Ontario the one day, like to the point where it was like it was smallmouth Disneyland on the graph. They were loaded everywhere. And I was like, this is crazy. And then 2 days later, I went to the same spot and I couldn't even catch a bass. So right then and there, I was like, you know what? What's on the line? This is not a smart decision. If I could stick in the river, 20 pounds a day could get me into the elites. So I kind of just put 95% of my time into the river at that point. And that's just where I lived and died, by the river. And going into it, that would be more consistent for me. I know some guys like to fish the lake and they think that's more consistent, but I knew the river bite was where I needed to be, catch, the bags I needed to make it, kind of what I was fishing for. I obviously fished to win, but I was fishing to win, but I was make the elites, and I didn't want to blow it by taking to go out in the lake and it getting too rough, or I break something, stuck or break down. So I felt like the most sensible option for me was in the river, and I stayed close. I only ran 10 miles at the most.
That's smart. Well, you made the final day. So, I mean, did you run to the lake at all to try to see if those fish were there to try to even swing for a win? Because you were in fourth going the last day, weren't you?
Yeah. No, I stuck with what I had. I truly think so. Where I fished, I knew that area pretty well, that whole section of it. But in practice, I had 27 pounds in different section of the river. So, but the only problem that was in that practice, I had the 27 pounds in one day, and it was just one fish here, one fish there, one fish there. And it wasn't like that's how it would have been. It's just I was practicing. So I pull up to an area, I catch one, I'd be like, all right, let's mimic it, move on. So I would do that, and I had 27 pounds. So the day after that, I was like, okay, we have to see if that'll work again. Went back to that same region of the river, different spots again, and I had 22 pounds like the first 2 hours. I was like, that's an option. So I also didn't know if that would be a consistent bite, though, because I caught those fish so spread out. I was a little worried that if I did choose to say, start there on day one, would I struggle to get 5 or 6? You know what I mean? Like to actually get a handful of fish. I didn't want to take that chance, essentially. So I went to where I thought I could catch 20 pounds. That's how my game plan was, where can you go and catch 20 pounds? And that's the first day I had almost 25, so they grew up a little bit. And then the second day I had almost 25 again, so they were still there. And the third day they were actually still there. I started and I caught a limit right away. But on that third day, something changed. I had to catch them a different way every day. So the first day I pulled up and I spot locked, and I had one. It was like one or a little ridge that swung one way, and then the current swung the opposite way, so it missed each other. And I just spot locked and made the same cast, and I caught 25 pounds in 20 minutes.
Too much.
So at that rate, I was like, okay, I'm done with this. So I went and fished that other area of the river where I caught the 27 pounds, and I didn't see the quality like I did in practice. But I still caught fish, but nothing to cull up what I already had. So the second day, same thing. I pulled up, spot locked, and in the first 10 casts, I caught 2 over 4, a 3 3/4, and I lost 2 that were bigger than the 2 that the biggest ones I landed. So right there, I was like, you had your shot at 22 pounds, 23. You could have been done for the day, and the bite just shut off. So like I kept fishing, making the same cast, and I could see fish up there where I was casting. They'd come in and out. They just weren't biting. So I was like, okay, I got to start drifting. So I would start drifting over the spot, and my co-angler started whacking them. Like
typical St. Lawrence.
The co-angler always has the upper hand.
It was my buddy too. We stayed in the house all week.
Oh man.
So he starts whacking them, and I'm getting frustrated. Like he's probably catching 4 to my 1. And when I get bit, it was a small one. So I was like, all right, what can you do? So I basically had to ignore the fact that he was going to catch them, and I just had to, focus on getting 1 bite, because realistically, I only needed 2 more good fish. So, I eventually caught 2 decent ones, and it got to the point where I was like, if I could catch 2 more big ones, it's over. Like I knew kind of like, I was at like 20 pounds, I think, at that point. If I caught 2 more decent fish, I'd have what I need to for sure make the elites. And couldn't get bit. The drift started, slowing. They weren't getting bit either. I kind of like started, poking around, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pick up a drop shot and graph fish. And that's what I did. And I ended up catching a 5 and then a 6-pounder just on the graph, just dropped him down. And then my co-angler got pretty frustrated with me.
Well, I mean, you're battling for the elites at that point.
Yeah.
Personally, if I was your buddy, I probably, after I had my limit, I would have set my rod down and be like, all right, buddy, go catch what you need. But I mean, I'm not going to say that out loud.
I'll go one leg up on that and be like, Andrew, if I was your co and you were about to make the elites, I don't think I would have brought a rod that day. I brought a 6-pack, a camera, and I would have just watched you fish.
That is fair as well. I mean, I think to backtrace there, like, yeah, I would have only fished if you told me to, and once I had my limit, I still would have stopped.
Yeah, well, the downfall was he had like 14 pounds the first day. So
yeah, he was trying to get up there.
Yeah.
I probably would have turned back at my buddy and been like, you catch 1 more fish over 3 pounds, and this drop shot weight is going at your head.
There was sometimes I turned around, I was like, what in the hell are you doing? And he's like, nothing. He's like, I'm just dragging it. And I'm like, okay, so I'm just moving too much with the boat, and that's why you're getting bit. And that's what it was.
So I went out the Sunday. I fished that one as a co. That Sunday leading into the event, I fished with Matt Pangrak out there. He's asking me, he's like, what are some small things I could do to get an advantage out here? And I was like, if you can learn to drift downriver with the bow of your boat facing forward, like you facing the front, you will have the advantage. But if you drift the easy way with the back of the boat obviously going downriver first, your co-angler is going to stick all the fish before you do. Not all of them, but like chances are usually the bigger fish eat first. They're going to stick the bigger one.
Yeah.
So if you can learn to point your trolling motor downriver and keep it efficient, I mean, that's the way to do it. And it's unfortunate. It's nice as a co-angler, don't get me wrong. But as a boater, it's tough to fish the river. But it's nice that you obviously still got the mission accomplished. Otherwise, I think you and your buddy probably would have not had some nice words after that.
Duking it out.
I do agree with that drifting, but like the way it was for me, like I had to drift going down it because I found that I could be going and I could be shooting that scope at the same time while I'm drifting. And if I can potentially see a fish light up on that scope, I would start trolling in that direction. And then that boat would be turned sideways and I would get the drift over that fish. So I was more so kind of trying to scope them and drift them at the same time.
Smart.
Interesting tactics.
That's some juice right there, I think, for boaters that can't solve the co-angler challenge on St. Lawrence.
Now you can only do that on the lower part where the current's not as strong. If you try to do that in Waddington or Messina, you're gonna do some damage to your boat. You're gonna put the boat on shore. You're gonna hit something.
That river has some gnarly spots.
Yeah, but at the same point in time, I think being able to find and acknowledge that you have an area that serves as a funnel for 2 different current seams that are coming down, that's pretty cool, dude. Like, because a lot of people would see that and be like, oh, like there's 2 different current things. They're right next to each other, where not many people can like realize the fact that they're coming and hitting each other. and you knew to pin yourself right there to hit to consistently fish that point where they're hitting. I mean, that takes some intuition there.
Quick question. That's some Susquehanna knowledge, isn't it?
I guess we'll call it that.
So either you grew up fishing a river system like a creek or a big river system to understand how current works, or you're a trout fisherman and from like fly fishing for trout that understand how current seams work and how smallmouth set up on them. I started my fishing endeavor as a steelhead fisherman, so I love fishing current because they work hand in hand with each other, and you just learn the little nuances and how those fish will sit there. And those are details that a lot of people miss. So kudos to you for picking that up.
Yeah, it definitely takes some time, and it gets to the point where you do get familiar with it, and once you kind of start getting an idea with it, you can almost like visually see it, and you can almost say, okay, well, there's probably a good chance I could get bit right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Joe says Susky for life. So you fish the Susky a lot, or like at least no, not at all.
Probably not since I was like 3, 4, 5 years old.
Oh wow!
Oh man,
That's
I'm dying
funny.
to go fish that place. I'm actually like debating. A buddy of mine, Jake Harshman's down there. He fishes that place all the time. I'm from that kayak. I'm debating on taking my Hobie down there in November because I heard the Susquehanna is absolutely stupid in fall, like most northern places. But
or are you talking about like the Susquehanna down by the bay, or like the upper part?
I think the upper. I think he's the upper towards the. What's the bridge with the famous little Statue of Liberty? You know what I'm talking about?
That's like mid PA. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, because the only Susquehanna River fishing I do now is just when we're at the Chesapeake Bay, just like the bottom.
Oh, okay. Well, dude, obviously it worked out in your favor. So post St. Lawrence River. But like, when did you find out? What were your initial thoughts? I mean, did you find out before day 3? That you made the elites?
Yeah, after day 1, I kind of seen where, because I had to essentially jump some guys to make it because I was sitting in 5th, I think, going into that last event.
Right.
After day 1, I was leading, and I kind of seen like the guy in 2nd his weight, guy in 3rd his weight, and so on. So I kind of had an idea. My idea was catch 20 pounds and you're probably going to be pushing it. But if you could do more on day 2, you're in. And that's kind of what my goal was. That's like when I was telling you earlier, when I had 20 pounds on that 2nd day, like I was like, I might be in, but 2 more fish would guarantee it. So when I did catch those other 2 fish, I knew it was like, mathematically over. Like you realistically would have, I think those other guys would have had to catch like a 29-pound bag. And that's kind of hard to do. So yeah. I knew on day 2 weigh-in that I would make it in no matter what.
So what was that feeling going home that day after day 2, and then how freeing was it for you on day 3 going to fish, knowing you accomplish your goal, and basically you get a fun fishing day where if you do well, you win $35,000?
After day 2, we actually went out that night. My family was up. A bunch of friends were up. The guys that stayed in the house with us. So there's like 15 of us. We all went out for dinner. So I really didn't think much of it. They were all kind of like, it was getting late at that point. It was like 9:30, 10 o'clock. They're like, dude, did you rig yet? And I'm like, no, I'll just do it.
I'll just do it in the morning.
And then we get back to the house, and my buddy who rode with me all week as my for practice, he's like, I got to check your boat. Where's your spray? Where's your cloth? And I'm like, why? He's like, I got to tighten all your bolts, all your screws. I'm going to clean your boat up for you. And I'm like, dude, it's fine. And he's like, no, you go inside, get showered up, get situated. He's like, I'll take care of the boat. So he buckled everything down on the boat for me. I woke up the next morning, the boat was covered, ready to go.
What a nice guy.
Wow, what a friend.
I know.
I would have never done that.
Had him on the back in a 6-pack. Yeah, I mean, what a good guy.
He probably felt guilty for catching all those fish behind you.
No, that was my practice partner, not the one that actually fished with me in the tournament.
So he was a good friend.
He was a practice though too. We caught some fish.
That's awesome.
But for the 3rd day, yeah, I fished free on the 3rd day. Where I was fishing, I started there in the morning, and those fish, they were doing something different, and they weren't eating right away like they were the previous 2 days. So I caught what I had. I weighed in like almost 15 pounds. I caught that right away from in the start of the morning. And my plan was to kind of just leave them and, come back at that right time because we had some wind blowing in and it was going to start kicking up and getting rough. And I actually timed it wrong. I got back and it was blowing like crazy in there, and they were actually blowing into me in towards the bank. So I couldn't set up and cast like I was because I was just taking waves over the side as I was trying to fish. So it kind of, the spot was a wash. And then after that, I tried to run and I swung a blade on my prop.
Ooh.
I couldn't get the prop off because it was put on with an impact gun. So I had to idle 3.5 miles back to the ramp to my truck to get power tools. So that wasted like 2 hours.
Oh,
but I didn't care.
Yeah, at that point, you're like, well, all right, whatever. Got the goal. Better day 3 than day 1 or 2.
Even after that, like when I got my spare prop on, like I looked out there and seen how rough it was, and I was like, well, you can run back over to that other section of the river where you had the 27 pounds in practice, but it was so rough. I was like, it doesn't make sense to to try to get all the way over there and break something or essentially start running and not even be able to get there. So I never did. I kind of just just started fishing, having fun with it, and it is what it is at that point.
Yeah.
You're living life. You're just enjoying the outdoors.
Yeah.
You're just there because you made the top 10.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just here so I won't get fined.
I was just about to say that, the old Marshawn Lynch. I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Well, dude, either way, congratulations. Obviously, it's a huge feat qualifying for the elites. Incredible. And obviously, winning a division in the Opens is an incredible accomplishment because people are saying more and more often now that the Opens are probably the hardest trail to not one, just do well in, but to win AOY. So tough as balls, dude. So congratulations. I think right now we're going to get into some fun questions here in a second, but now with the elite season, on the horizon for you and getting ready for it, you've been stepping up your social game, which if you guys aren't following them on social media, down in the show notes or just YouTube description, you guys can follow them on Instagram and Facebook. But what are some hurdles for you? What are some things you're excited for? I want to hear about some challenges and some fun things that are obviously have arose now that you've qualified for the Bassmaster Elite Series.
And I'm going to add one little tidbit here. Something that you're looking forward to and something you're not looking forward to next year on the Elite Series that may or may not happen.
Well, I'm going to give you the not looking forward to part. All that driving, that schedule is very far.
Yeah. Just ask your buddy that cleans your boat. I'm sure he'll drive you around.
Chauffeur for free.
Oh, I'll let him drive. I'll fly there.
There you go.
Even better.
All right, Scott Martin.
You were learning something here.
Yeah. I had to pull a map out to figure out where that was.
Yeah. So let's hear about it. Some challenges, all that jazz. Something you're looking forward to. All 9 yards.
The biggest challenge is just getting into it and learning the business side of it. As a rookie going into it, it's a change. It's not just a change in fishing, but it's a change in your lifestyle. You have to kind of learn to adapt, and I'm willing to do that. You have to learn how to really reach out and sell yourself, but also support anyone who does support you in the end, essentially going into next season. That's kind of been the biggest challenge so far is, just getting, my name out there and making contacts. It's always going to be the hardest part. It's in any job. It's just, if you're looking for a job, you have to get in touch with somebody. You have to, apply. You have to, show off yourself, promote yourself. And that's kind of the biggest hurdle I've experienced so far.
Yeah. What do you, so Kyle Pillars is asking what guys on, he's curious about what guys on tour do when they fish at a high level. When you're not fishing, is there something that you do as a side gig, something as like a way of being comfortable when you're on the road to try to have some financial backing? Is there anything you do on the side besides fish? Yeah,
well, to answer his question, some guys do. Some guys have full-time careers, and some don't. Some, fish. Some guys have, like you said earlier, Brandon Polnick, Hunter Shryak. They all have very well YouTube platforms and social media gigs going on. But I personally do. I work for my dad. He owns a construction business, so we do plaster, stucco, and drive at work on the side. And then during the winter times when that slows, we do snow removal.
Nice. So he's always grinding, Andy.
Hardworking man.
Grind don't stop
I
for
like
Jonathan
this.
Kelley.
That's good. He learned how to grind from a young age.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Joe is asking if you're going to travel with Hartman next year.
Yes.
I think that's a good guide to have going into your rookie elite season.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, I mean, the business side, we talked about it a little bit offline. Like, the business side is such an important factor, especially from a sponsor level. I mean, I don't think beyond maybe a Jacob Wheeler, or I don't know too many guys that could really have a really good living right now based off just tournament winnings.
Mhm.
There's not many. It's less than 1%. I would put it on. So like, you have to be business savvy in this industry, especially as an angler, doing it for a living. And I think that's one thing you picked up on. As we mentioned, you've been stepping up your game with social media. So bravo on that. And it's just one thing, some guys like it, some guys don't. If you can get creative, you can really find a niche. But it's interesting to see how this industry has grown, where it's not just fishing anymore. But it seems that you've been kind of molding around to that idea, so I think you'll be okay. But
yeah, I kind of, I started getting into the social media, more and more over the last year or two. That's kind of where it all started. I know I wasn't, I couldn't get myself to do it when I was in college. Like, I would do it, but I just minimal, like as little as possible. And, kind of after that, when I did, last year I jumped in Toyota series, I was like, you know what, I got to start promoting things more, sell myself a little better. And I did work for that and strive to, clean up my Instagram. Like, I try to, keep it good posts. When you do post, make sure they are good pictures. Make sure you're not posting, blurry pictures or anything like that. Just have a nice display. And that's kind of what I have strived to do over the last year as best as I could. Continuously learning more and more about it as I do it. So I will continue to work to, fulfill that.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's always good. Some people think that quantity is better than quality, but that's not always the case.
Mm-hmm.
But dude, you're doing a good job, so keep it up. But looking forward
Bailey's
to
the master, so ask him any questions you have.
I wouldn't call me a master.
I plug him with questions all the time, and he was like, no. You're doing it all wrong.
I tell you, look out, let me do it for you.
Pretty much.
So dude, one tournament next year. What do you look like? Which one are you looking forward to most on the schedule?
The first one at St. John's River.
Just because it's your first one, or is there any meaning to the St. John's?
I like that place a lot. I like the way that place sets up. I kind of like, that style of fishing. Has a little bit of title involved in some portions of it. So I definitely feel comfortable, at least, for that being my first one. I'm glad that it definitely is. There's a bunch of other ones. Like, the schedule this year is really good. Like, there's going to be some big fish caught and some big bass caught. I mean, you might see a couple of 30-pound bags at Santee Cooper if we hit it at the right time. So
I guess that's a big question mark, right? Timing.
Yeah, if it's a big if for a couple of them, big if.
Mm-hmm. Andy
and weather.
Just this much excited for that one.
Just
maybe like this much.
We're fishermen. We're this excited.
Yeah. Well, man, it's dude. I mean, talk about. This question will kind of lead into what you are as an angler, and then we'll kind of lead back to the schedule. But one, I want to know if you're an angler that likes to either be on the bank or off the bank, power or finesse, and then we'll dive into more from there. But let's start with that. Do you like to be on the bank or off the bank, or do you like to power fish or finesse fish?
I like to be on the bank for largemouth, but off the bank for smallmouth. So it's a little twist.
Okay.
I like it.
It's
power or finesse?
Definitely power.
Power.
I was like the only guy throwing bait casters up at St. Lawrence for that last open.
Ooh.
I had 10
I think we're gonna throw a little sidebar in here with Joe. We know he was throwing some heavy.
Joe will
too.
argue that one.
I think my co-angler actually told Joe what I caught him on the first day.
So Joe didn't find that himself.
So we're throwing shade here now.
Shots across the bow.
I don't think it was the truth, but
indeed.
This is true. Dean Metcalf was throwing a bait cast the majority of the time as well. Not only did Joe steal your pattern, but he fell in the lake at the launch. We're just giving Joe a hard time. But all right, so if you have one power technique, you have one finesse technique, which one do you pick? Like, what are you picking up for each? So you can one power technique, one finesse. What are your two?
Finesse, definitely drop shot, whether it's for smallmouth or largemouth, no doubt about that. I'll split it, for both. For largemouth, I'm going to go with a spinnerbait. For smallmouth, I'm going to go just, dragging jig. I consider that power fishing.
Like a big jig or like a finesse jig?
Yeah, just a half-ounce jig. But, I fish it pretty aggressively sometimes, so I really don't. I kind of consider that as like a power finesse fishing.
Okay.
I don't
hybrid.
I don't really just sit there and just let the jig kind of sit there. I'll really bring that along, especially in that current. You know how fast that current rolls sometimes. I think that is considered power fishing to me.
Yeah.
Because you can cover a lot of water in that current when you're, just drifting with it, dragging a jig. I think that's, give another lead to something. That was one way that I practiced at that St. Lawrence. I power fished a Carolina rig. I covered water with a trolling motor on 100 with a Carolina rig.
Interesting.
That's some talent.
We came across a lot of fish. Like my buddy that practiced with me, he was like, I would have never thought to do this. He's like, this.
So like, you're casting the Carolina rig, or you're on 100 dragging it behind you?
So, depending on where we were set up, or like what the current presented us.
I've never heard of that. I don't think I have the
cover a lot of
it. Bravo. Yeah.
Burning water.
Andy, you got anything for Jonathan here before we hit him with the last question?
I think he covered it here pretty well. I just kind of want to know your mental makeup here. Are you somebody, when you start off a day, if you pull up in that first spot and you don't start catching them, do you start to spin and the wheels start turning real fast, or can you just hunker down and grind it out? I know you said you're a grinder, but where does your mind actually go in that situation?
I think I can usually keep my cool. I mean, the James River was definitely a testament of it. Like I said, it was pretty incredible. I didn't even think you can catch that big of bags in there like I was catching in practice. And to not see that in the first 30 minutes of fishing, like I really could have lost it that day for sure. But I settled down pretty good. And I think it just, you learn that as time comes. You go back and in like my college years definitely affected me a little more. I was a little more, spun out. I had times where if I had a bad day, I would, continue having bad days. I kind of, keep a clean slate and, if something goes wrong, just push it away and move on. That's kind of how I definitely have grown the last year or two. And I think that's important for taking that next step.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things to do is to stay focused when everything's going wrong. So kudos.
So before our last question here, Joe is apparently feeling himself tonight because he's got another question here. And he said, hey, tell us about beaching the boat on the James in 2017 and that it apparently is easy to go to bathroom on sandbars. Is it story time or does it move on ask the last question time?
Or did he tell the entire story?
Is he like looking at my Instagram, trying to find that one picture of my boat? No picture.
I wouldn't put it past Joe, so probably.
No, we were down there for a regional at the James, and I was running, and I'm running, and I was like on like 30 miles an hour, and all of a sudden, boom, like but it was the most graceful stop of my life. And like I'm looking and I'm like, I can see water like on my side of the boat, but the whole co-angler side was just dry land.
Yikes.
So I was like, oh my God. So I get out thinking, okay, I can slide, see if I can slide it off. Well, the right half of the boat was in 3.5 feet of water. The left half was in dry as can be, and the tide was still going out for an hour. So I was by myself. I couldn't lift a fiberglass bass boat by myself. So I sat there, had lunch, went to the bathroom. I fished from the sandbar. I didn't catch nothing. And then about 4 hours later, I think I made it on my way.
Oh my gosh. I guess it could be a lot worse. It definitely could be a lot worse. But all right. Now that story's out of the way. I was looking for something exciting, but apparently it wasn't that exciting.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone who fishes those tidal rivers gets stuck on a sandbar at some point.
It would have been better if I had like someone to experience it with, or somebody got stuck with me. Like if me and Joe were side by side and we both, drove up on this sandbar and we could have made a day out of it. But I was by myself.
Had like bust out the picnic baskets, made some sandwiches,
Yeah, I was by myself and I had nothing to do. No one was by me. I was like so far down in a creek that no one ever goes in. So
now you know why no one goes in the creek.
Yeah.
Lessons learned the hard way.
Yeah. All right, Jonathan, our last question for you tonight is one we always ask everybody that's new to the show. And that is, if you could sit down and have a steak and a beer with 3 different individuals, they don't have to be in the fishing industry. They could be athletes. They could be family members, whoever. It could be whoever you want. It could be 1,000 years ago. Could still be alive. Who would you sit down, have a steak and a beer with, pick their brain? 3 individuals. Go.
Ooh, that is a tough one. Let's see.
Always stumps him.
Let's go with George Washington. Why not?
But why? And not just why not?
I mean,
what teeth, bro?
I don't know why. I mean, shoot. You got me on
Wouldn't
this.
you want to talk to George Washington?
Huh?
So wouldn't you want to talk to George Washington?
Yeah. I mean, tell me a little bit how it was back in those days. Tell me how it all started.
He's probably like, thank God I died if he saw our country now.
Yeah, probably. Oh, gosh.
Other than that,
it can be fishing or non-fishing.
If it was fishing, I would say like it would be cool to sit down with Rick Clunn. I mean, just to kind of, because I still get to watch him fish, and he's been in our industry for so long. To actually have a sit down conversation with him, I think that'd be very, a life experience. I think you would learn a lot just talking to him. It's someone that everyone knew growing up fishing, even if you weren't really into fishing, you just knew of Rick Clunn. So I think that would be a big, one on the fishing side. And then the third one.
Well, dude, you're going to get a chance to probably sit down with Rick Clunn this year.
I hope.
He's probably, you get to fish against him.
I know.
Talk about a guy who will teach you a lesson or two on spinnerbaits.
I know. He might have to.
Or
Hopefully it's not at the first one, or else he'll be winning it again.
All right, third one.
Ugh.
Did you play sports growing up?
Do you get everybody like this? Oh, yeah. I watch sports.
Only new guys to the show. So next time you come on, you won't get hit with the 3-person question unless you want it again.
Sidney Crosby.
My man.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, Bailey's going to be pumped about that one.
I had to throw something in there eventually.
I think we had this conversation over Instagram talking about Pens fans, but
yeah, that would be pretty cool. I've been a big hockey fan my whole life. It'd be really nice to meet him and sit down with him. I don't know. I'm sure he doesn't drink beer, but
oh, I'm sure he does. I'm sure
he's Canadian. Bro.
He's Canadian. They drink beer.
I know, but
they drink lots of beer out the womb. He's not only is he like, as a hockey player, really awesome to grow up, as a role model and to obviously watch play. But I think he's super interesting because you don't know much about him unless you like read books about him or like hear some stories from teammates about him because
He's
he doesn't have social media, doesn't care for it. He's
and you guys think he drinks beer? All right, come on, give me some credit here. I think I might be right on this one.
Who knows?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Who knows, man? But yeah, Joe said he's probably bottle fed on Labatt's. But no, it's a good 5. Good 3, 5. Why did I say 5? But
what are you doing?
Dude, congrats again on qualifying for the Elite Series. Major props. We're proud to one, getting on the show, and two, to watch you go fish the Elite Series this year. Hopefully, you might give some people a lesson on spinner baits at St. John's. But either way, we hope to get you back on here real soon. We appreciate you taking the time. And again, I am very jealous that you're fishing Chickamauga right now.
Me too.
Yeah, but when you get back up north, we'll have to get some time and go fishing before the ice gets here.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys for having me. I really do appreciate
Thanks,
it.
John.
I look forward to get back.
Yeah, so your Instagram and your Facebook are in the show notes and the YouTube description, but is there anything else that people should follow you at or anything like that?
You can follow me at both of those right now. I do have a website that is being developed that'll be done in the next week or so.
Awesome.
And then after that, when I do come back from this trip and like the Toyota Championship, I am starting a YouTube channel. I didn't want to just start it just because I made the Elite, so I was kind of waiting until I made this trip out here to actually get some footage to use for it. So come, the first week of November, I will have a YouTube up and running with some footage from this week out here and then the week at the Toyota Championship on Pickwick.
Heck yeah, dude. Well, we're looking forward to that. And when you start that YouTube, we'll be sure to throw it out on our channels because I consume a lot of YouTube fishing. So I'm looking forward to watching you behind the camera. So congrats again on the Elites, dude. And we will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right, man.
Have a good night. Good luck.
Thank you.
I am so jealous that he's fishing Chickamauga. I love that. I mean, you and I are. You've heard me talk.
We've talked.
Yeah,
we've talked about it. Yeah,
Chickamauga comes up.
I gotta get there, man. I gotta get there.
Tell you. So here's an idea. I'm going to throw it out to the folks because why not? Something that Andy. See, I
Captain. Oh, Captain. Whatever you want.
Andrew, Andy, Captain. Those 3 guys.
Those 3 guys. 3 and 1.
Andy and Adam, we've been discussing is the potential of doing a series this year, and we're calling it Quest for 10. So, like, obviously chasing that giant, the 10-pounder that everyone always dreams of. And we're very curious, if you guys would be interested in seeing a series like that. It'd be something we'd get like a whole film crew, make a whole trip out of it, go down to like a Chick or somewhere in Texas, Louisiana, maybe a Florida, something like that. So if you guys are interested, obviously let us know. But also in that same line of thought, winter is coming for us here in New York. We only have about a month and a half, maybe 2 months, if we're lucky, of open water fishing left. That being said, there's a couple months stretch there where Andy and I can't get on open water unless we travel. So if you guys have topic ideas that you'd love for us to cover, go in depth, make more videos on, one, let us know so we can try to film something on it. If it's good enough we can film it during the fall, let us know on that. But then 2, let us know ideas and topics of stuff to film for a podcast content for people to get on, stuff to talk about. Either one, let us know in this show comments, reach out to us on social media. You guys can send us an email. If you're still listening to this, watching this right now, our show email is always in the description. I don't think we've ever plugged it. You guys can feel free to reach out. The email goes to myself, and I always share fan emails and such with Andrew and Adam. So feel free to email us on there if you want to be like, hey, I enjoyed this show. You guys should talk about this. Or maybe if to comment on one show where you want to tell me or Andy that we're dumb. Whatever the fact is.
It happens. We call each other dumb all the time.
All the time. But either way, we encourage your guys' thoughts because there might be some things fishing-wise that Andy, Adam, or I aren't thinking about. And it's very likely the case. So we'd like to hear about what you guys want to hear about. And if it's something we don't know, we can get on somebody who does know, and then we're all learning. So obviously, we highly encourage you guys doing that. So, Andy, Anything to add before we hop off here tonight?
Go Bills.
Go Bills. What did you have a score update?
It is 6-0. No, 7-6 Tennessee because Derrick Henry broke an 80-yard touchdown run. Well, there was 3 holds on the play by Tennessee, and they didn't call one. It's kind of wonky, but the Bills
How
are
do you let
driving.
that big of man. You have what? How do you let that man run all the way?
Just
Not that
gone.
fast.
Dude, he's fast. He's like a 4.4 runner. Like, he was boogieing.
You're telling me that their corners and defensive backs for the Bills can't catch that man?
He was gone. Like,
It was
20
gone.
yards gone. Like, he was
You're telling me
running.
Poyer or Tre'Davious White or
Well, Trey White
Taylor-
got dragged down by the back of his neck, like 5 feet behind him. And then Poyer was just destroyed by a lineman.
Oh,
So, like,
that's fun.
when I said there was 3 holdings on the play, there was literally 3 holdings on the play. They didn't call.
Yikes. Sounds like it's going well for the Bills.
They're driving. They're about to score. So
That's good. I need more points from Josh Allen for fantasy.
I think he's like 9 for 11
Not bad.
for like
not bad.
120 yards or so. So
All right. Well, folks, we are going to tune off here. Tomorrow we have a smallmouth video coming out to you guys. I got to finish editing that. That'll be up in the morning. That being said, too, if there's times where you guys like to post, I know some people said noon. So we've been trying early mornings, noon, evening. Let us know when you guys like to see some of the YouTube vids. So that being said, we're going to tune off here, and we'll see you guys on Friday.